This time on the Highland Woodworker, we'll string along with notable guitar maker Kipp Krusa. See the steps he uses to make these musical masterpieces. Then, Popular Woodworking's Glen Huey tells us what we need to know about shellac before buying it off the rack.
We just wanted people not to just burn the barns and throw them away.
We'll also catch up with two young brothers who turn dilapidated barns into unbelievable furniture and home designs.
The more I was doing my day job, working as a desktop publisher, the more I was dreaming about carving when I got home in the afternoon.
Mary May is one of the biggest names in wood carving today. We'll take you to her Charleston, South Carolina workshop to spend a moment with this amazing master. All of this and more, this time on the Highland Woodworker. Hi, I'm Charles Brock, and I'm a Highland Woodworker. I love to come to Highland Woodworking for all my fine tools and woodworking needs. Hi, John.
Hey, Chuck, how you doing?
It's so nice to see you. Listen, John, I build a lot of jigs in my shop, and I want to reinforce some butt joints, make them really strong so that the jigs will last, and I build some cabinets every once in a while, too. Have you got something that'll help?
I think I have the perfect thing.
Well, thank you so much. We'll see it in a minute, but first, we really had to pull some strings to get this notable Nashville guitar maker on our show. Let us introduce you to Kipp Krusa.
This guitar in particular, if you were to play this guitar and compare it to another baritone, the ones that I've compared it to, this to me is like a baby grand piano. When you play it, the whole top of the guitar is resonating. And if you listen to just the, I mean, it never stops. It just goes on. And that's hard to find. And that's because of how the man braces the guitar.
Two things that I love, guitars and woodworking. Both of them come together here with Kipp Krusa. Wow, Kipp. Tell me about how you make your fabulous guitars.
Well, it all starts with the plates. We purchase spruce for the tops and hardwoods for the back and sides. And this is the way the material comes. They're book-matched plates, so these were once one unit. And the backs come the same way. This one's glued up. This is mango. This is Adirondack spruce.
A straight grain. I mean, that is some of the straightest grain I've ever seen.
Perfectly quarter sawn is really what you shoot for. That's right.
Does that help with the sound?
It does, yeah. Quarter sawn material is not only more stable, but it's much more resonant. You know, the sound travels vertically along those grain lines beautifully.
Well, that's beautiful. And all the different materials for the backs.
Yes. Yeah, so there's traditionally rosewoods and mahoganies, but these days we've got materials like wenge, bocote, just innumerous materials, even eboniers used for back and sides.
Wow. And you're well stocked here.
That's right, that's right.
Now, is all this fresh stock?
No, a lot of it's actually aged. The spruce I like to age for quite some time. We've got some Adirondack spruce here from 1999 and some from 2000. So I've had that in my possession for 14 years.
Does it help that it's aged?
It does. It does. What happens is the resins in the spruce harden with time, and the older the top is, really, the nicer the initial product will be.
Because it gets harder and harder.
It does. It gets stiffer and stiffer. That's right. Once the plates are glued up, they're thicknessed, and a back will range from 80 thousandths of an inch to 110, depending on how stiff it is. And then those plates are braced. The bracing material is again spruce. Then those plates are carved.
Now I see that they're kind of crowned up to a hard line.
A peak.
And a peak, and then this is shaved off. Why do you do that?
The tapering, what you want is to allow as much of the plate to vibrate as possible. So you need the structure, but it's also allowing that plate to move.
So this kind of provides a strong back in a way.
Correct.
Is it glued on?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of glues do you use?
Either epoxy and white glue. I've used hide glue in the past, and I've sort of gravitated away from it currently.
Now the bracing, I understand, is not just to make it stronger. It has a lot to do with sound.
It does, especially on the tops. And so here's a plate that's an Adirondack spruce top that's in the process of being braced. And the bracing configuration has an immense amount to do with what you end up tonally out of an instrument. The goal is really to transmit this vibration where the bridge will be here throughout as much of the top as possible and as evenly as possible.
Well, curves. You gotta have curves on a guitar side.
That's right.
How do you do it?
Okay, so my sides are bent in a bender, which I build and create all my own custom shapes. And the side materials thickness to about 65 to 80 thousandths of an inch, which is quite thin. And then I do dip it in boiling water for just a second to keep it from scalding, and heat blankets help it bend into the curve.
And so this has a heater inside of it?
There's a blanket that will go in between the stainless steel.
All right.
Right.
And then you've got a form.
So then you've got a form. So we have an inside form that we bend around and an outside form that I build in. Those two forms are offset by about 90 thousandths of an inch to allow for that thickness of the material. At that point, blocks, an end block and a block are put on, and then the shape of the finished instrument is sanded into the sides. And we see here, this is a radius dish which I build in. It's quite a steep departure. This is a brace that's contoured to match that radius. So when I'm bracing those instruments, I'm actually building an arch into the top. And that arch also has to be imparted into the sides by carving it. So our goal is to have both a top and a back that's radiused, and if dropped into that form, will just fit right in there. And there you have it.
So that form is pretty much your standard for radiusing a top.
A top and the back, that's right.
And the back.
That's right.
Well, that's interesting.
And if you look from the side, you can see that that instrument is tapered from here to the front as well. So we have our backs that have an arched brace, and that brace relates to our negative form. Now we have to have our sides marry that arch. So after penciling in, I would have hand carved this down slightly. I will use the same radius form with 36 grit sandpaper, and I will just work it into that shape.
Well, that's exciting. Can I try it?
Of course.
All right. So about how long does it take to get there?
After the hand carving, just a few minutes.
That is neat. Well, Kipp, how do you get such a precise depth of cut with your router referencing off of a curved surface?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's one that took a little while to really nail. But what I've done is I've taken this wonderful old dental tool and attached a router to it and modified the base so that just 1/8 of an inch is making contact with the top, and it allows me to keep the router in vertical orientation while running around the outside of the body.
Well, that's a great application. I could see how you would be up and down and all over the place and then having to spend hours trying to correct that otherwise.
It's a big time saver.
And your binding is just beautiful on your instruments.
Well, binding is kind of the part of the process when it starts to become a little bit of a jewelry box, when all of the detailing starts to come together.
Well, this is just gorgeous, and I see that it's kind of slightly rounded. What's the purpose there?
It's the binding, if it's too sharp, can really wear on your underarm and your belly for people that play a lot of guitar. And to that effect, a lot of my instruments actually have a bevel on the upper bout, which is a solid piece of stock that's inset in there and ties into the binding on either side. Now, necks are made with out of a block of 4/4 mahogany. There's a scarf joint here and a channel routed for a truss rod, and then a headstock veneer goes on, and then a fingerboard goes on, and then a block is glued, located and glued, and from there the sides of the mahogany will be cut out with the bandsaw, and then the neck is hand carved. So it's a series of glue ups and then a lot of carving.
Do you like to use spoke shaves and scrapers? And
I mostly use rasps. I do to initially define the outside angle. I initially do use spoke shaves, but from there I'm mostly a rasp person.
Well, Kipp, I love the mother of pearl and abalone inlay. How do you do it?
Okay, well, I start with a computer drawing, and I cut my pearl by hand and fit the pearl to the drawing. You can see a few here, started on this inlay. And then once I have all the pieces cut, I glue them all to the fingerboard, scribe them, remove them with solvent, and then I route the inlay. It's a long but simple process.
I see. Requires a lot of work.
That's right.
Yeah, I know it. But the results are just outstanding.
Well, thank you.
Chuck, I think we have the perfect thing for you right here. This is the Craig K5 jig. Features a quick adjusting clamp that can adjust to any width of stock quickly. You just clamp it in and drill your holes.
That looks great. And these screws pull up the joint tight. Is that the way it works?
That's correct, Chuck.
I know the exact application I have for this in the shop with a jig that I've been working on. Thanks so much for your service, John.
Thank you, Chuck.
Coming up, shellac comes in liquid and solid forms. Popular Woodworking's Glen Huey takes the flakiness out of the selection. Then we'll meet two brothers who tear down the old and build something new. You've just got to see this. You're watching the Highland Woodworker. Saw Stop is the only table saw that stops on contact with skin. Its safety features and unmatched quality and craftsmanship have made it the best-selling cabinet saw in America. Order a Saw Stop professional cabinet saw from Highland Woodworking in March or April of 2014 and choose either one of these two accessories for free. That's a $199 extra value. Put a Saw Stop in your shop. Are your tools Tormek sharp? Tormek, consistent, reliable, and razor sharp. Tormek, sharpening innovation. Introducing the ultimate flush trim router bit by Whiteside. Get CNC quality cuts from your patterns every time. Whiteside, industrial grade and American made. Forrest, manufacturer of the award-winning Woodworker 2, presents the PVW blade, designed specifically for the rip and cross-cutting of plywood and plywood veneers without splintering or chip-outs. Highland Woodworking has been a leader in woodworking education for over 30 years. They offer all kinds of woodworking classes year-round, ranging from how to hand-cut dovetails and mortises, to how to sharpen a plane or a chisel, how to build a cabinet, a chair, or a bookcase, or how to turn a wooden bowl. There are classes on wood finishing, French polishing, and even antique furniture restoration. For a list of upcoming classes that may interest you, go to highlandwoodworking.com. What do you know about shellac? Well, Glen Huey breaks it down for us, this time on Popular Woodworking's tips, tricks, and techniques. Glen, shellac is fascinating.
Yeah.
How do you get into shellac? I mean, why would you use it and how would you use it?
Well, for me, Chuck, I'll tell you, shellac is probably what I consider to be the best furniture finish that woodworkers can use. And it's because it's so versatile. It's easy to use, it's easy to mix. It's repairable if you need to repair it because it's very simple to do. And it's a product that's been around forever. It goes over the top of most finishes, and almost every film finish can go over the top of it.
Sounds like a winner.
It's just all around the board. So how do you get into it? There's a couple different ways. The first one we're going to talk about is the shellac flakes. Now, shellac flakes come in different colors, which again makes this really nice for you to kind of tone your projects and give it a little extra hump here and there. And what you do with the flake is they mix in denatured alcohol. And when we talk about shellac, we generally talk about pound cuts. And the easiest way to remember that is 1 pound of shellac in 1 gallon of alcohol gives you a 1 pound cut. So if you want to go to the next step, a 2 pound cut would be 2 pounds of granulars into 1 gallon of shellac, or of alcohol, I'm sorry. So that's the easy way to remember. Now, you're probably not going to mix that much, so you just got to work through breaking it down, but it's the same way. And we're looking at, for furniture-wise, I'm usually talking about a 3 pound cut or a 2 pound cut or a 1 pound cut. I generally don't go any lower than that because as you get thinner than a 1 pound cut, it starts to run a little bit faster before it dries.
I see.
And this is another reason that people go to shellac. It's very fast drying product. So you can put 5-6 coats on in an 8-hour period, which means you could build your finish up a lot faster.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah. So
and you can vary the tone too.
Yeah, the different colors that are available, from very light blondes to dark reds, and it's just all over the place. It's well worth looking into.
Well, that's wonderful. What are some of the things that I need to know about buying the shellac products?
Well, here's the interesting part. You know, we said that the alcohol is what you break the shellac down in. These are some old versions. Now, generally the flakes are going to be a higher shelf life time frame. All shellac, once you mix it, has a shelf life. So you have to consider that. What happens when shellac gets old is it doesn't dry. And having a gummy layer on your furniture is not good. So this is a little bit older, but it could probably still work. And what'll happen is you'll bring shellac home and you should try to get the flakes and not these pieces that are kind of chunky like this. But if you put shellac together and you don't find that it's dissolving in your regular store-bought shellacs and things, then alcohols, then you need to look at the alcohol, because these alcohols that come from the home centers, they have a little water in them. And there are some purer alcohols that are out there, denatured alcohols. A fine, high-quality denatured alcohol will take these rocks that we have in shellac and put them right down into the place where they're good to use for your furniture products.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the kicker with me. I get to the point where I'm ready to do shellac, and it's like, I didn't mix any, I didn't set it up. It takes a 24-hour period to get it all broken down. So what do? Well, I'm a big one for this products that you buy at the home center stores. These are excellent shellac products. In my mind, there's no difference between these two. I've used the canned products for years. And Zinsser is probably the best known name out there. Very user-friendly company. And I say that for a reason, all right? So here's what happens. Zinsser says their shellac is good for 3 years from the date of manufacture. All right, so if we have a date of manufacture of this, on this can, you can actually see it says 799. So that means in 2009 this was made. We're past the 3-year period, so this shellac I wouldn't use.
It needs to go out.
It's out the door. Get rid of it. Well, about 1.5 years ago, Zinsser put out a new thing on their top and they put lot numbers on it. Well, there's no date there. So how do I know where the 3-year period is? The minute I seen this, I contacted Zinsser and I said, hey, you know, what's going on with this? Within a 38 or 36-hour period, I had an answer back from the company telling me exactly how to decode this so I know what my shellac date was of manufacture. And the way this works is, forget the S, let's go to the first number. You see the 0, that means 2010. Now if it was a 1 or 2, it'd be 2011, sure. 2012. The next number after the first one is the month. 1 through 0 is going to be January, February, March, whatever. And when they get to November, it's an N. In December, it's a D. Now, you really don't need to know what the rest of the numbers mean because we know the month and the year. But if you want to carry it one more, the next 2 numbers are the date of manufacture.
So this is important.
Yes,
You just can't break it down and use it properly unless you know the
right.
shelf life.
You need to know the shelf life and when it was made because you don't want to spray gummy stuff on your project.
That definitely.
Yeah.
That pretty much unlocks it for me. I can't wait to get to my shop and try it.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Glen.
You bet, you bet. Thank you.
This next story features 2 young brothers who reclaim old barn wood, recycle it, and build amazing functional pieces of furniture out of it. Generation Next introduces you to the Tennessee Barn Project.
I'm Jake Herring.
And I'm Luke Herring.
And we live in Thompson Station, Tennessee. As kids, we always were outside. We were born in Oklahoma, and we were outside. We built our first tree house there, you know, that kind of stuff, just using whatever we could find around the ranch. When we moved down to Texas, we would work with our dad's dad in the summers, building docks and boat houses, and Luke built a fire station.
We are very fortunate to be in this generation woodworking, only because things are very easy for everybody. I think a lot of the woodworkers our age, you know, and in our generation, they should consider themselves very fortunate, only because seeing what woodworkers did in the past is remarkable. I mean,
we've got a lot of respect for the woodworkers of the past, and we often say, when we're referring to the woodworkers of the past, the real carpenters. And when we walk into a barn and you know you see that through mortise, and you're like, we just picture the guy standing in that position for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
and those hand-hewn beams. Yeah. I mean, even just moving, everything horse and buggy, everything is just chains and ropes. Yeah. It's just all, it's unbelievable. Tennessee Barn Project is salvaging the past for the future, keeping the old lumber and incorporating it into new homes, whether it's home building or furniture.
We've always learned from our dad and our grandpa and to be thrifty and resourceful and use what's around you. And I mean, we see an old dilapidated barn around, it's like, well, there's plenty of things that can happen with that.
We just wanted people not to just burn the barns and throw them away.
Under the piece, we'll put a plaque that has a picture of the barn, the GPS coordinates, the year that the barn stood as close as we can guess. I mean, we know when it came down. The species of the lumber, and then the website, and the piece number, barn and piece number. So like piece 232 is barn 2, the 32nd piece that came out of that barn.
Jake actually came up with that idea. The reason we did that is because as kids, Grandma, Grandpa, and Mom and Dad, we always had antique furniture that belonged to the family. And there was always things written under, we were always crawling under things, and we were always curious. And
of how it went together, and you know.
And some people had stamped it, some people put dates on it,
yeah.
You know, I mean, and we were just always like, oh man, this piece of furniture says 1913 or something, this is crazy. And that's
yeah.
where we decided to put that.
So that in the future, you know, some kid looks under the table with that same curiosity and can go to a website and pull up multiple pictures of that piece's past life, you know, and can know about, you know, where it was and who owned it and what happened nearby. And when most people think of barnwood, they think of gray lumber or brown lumber. We like to try to clean it up as much as possible. Our relationship as brothers has grown a lot working together because, I mean, we're to the point where we don't even have to speak to each other. We know what we're thinking, you know. We spent, that's what it does when you spend that many hours together with somebody, I mean, more than your wife.
A lot of people say, do you guys fight a lot? And yeah, we argue like anyone else does, but in the end, we both are looking for the same thing. We both want the same thing. We both want to continue doing what we're doing, building together, and if we could just make a living off of building together, we're fine. Yeah, we get along on a personal level pretty well, but you can imagine us being together 5-6 days out of the week for 8-9 hours a day. Yeah. So it gets tense every once in a while, but nothing we can't work out.
Still ahead.
You know, my friends are like, Mary, why don't you just carve a normal pumpkin like everybody else?
A moment with woodcarver Mary May. Hear how an early childhood craft turned a lot of heads. Plus, we'll head to my shop to put that Craig jig to good use. Let's see what happens. You're watching the Highland Woodworker. Rikon Power Tools, a leader in woodworking power tools for over 10 years with a passion for quality and performance at an affordable price. Rikon has a full line of dependable tools, including a long list of industry-leading bandsaws like their new powerful 10-350 14-inch Professional. Rikon Power Tools, tools designed by woodworkers.
Do you need wood? Then go nowhere but Bell Forest Products. Come stand in awe of our 20,000 square foot showroom that houses over 75 species of exotic wood, the largest in the Midwest. What more could you want? A knowledgeable staff? Well, come in and speak to one of these handsome young men because they know wood. They breathe wood, they eat wood, they live wood, they love wood, they are wood. So plan your adventure to Bell Forest Products, 200 East Hematite Street, downtown Ishpeming, or visit us online at bellforestproducts.com. Because we got wood.
Masterpiece Wood Finish is a special 3-part oil and wax system designed to enhance the beauty of wood. It's easy to apply, maintain, and repair. Applying several coats of the base coat, mid coat, and top coat to a prepared wood surface will create a finish that will make a craftsman smile. I helped develop Masterpiece Wood Finish, not just for your masterpiece, but mine too.
Craig, from the first cut to the final assembly, providing woodworkers with products that help simplify woodworking challenges. Craig.
If you can't make it to Atlanta, then you can always shop us on the web at www.highlandwoodworking.com. Moment with a Master is presented by Masterpiece Wood Finishes, helping you build beautiful furniture. You know, there's something about Mary May. She cut her path as a master woodcarver, artist, and teacher. We traveled to Charleston, South Carolina to learn all about her. Inside this peaceful Charleston, South Carolina workshop, Mary May works her magic. Her precision and patience always pays off, creating masterpieces set in wood and in stone. Three-dimensional art was something that came natural to Mary, even at an early age.
It was Halloween and we were having a pumpkin carving contest. And where everybody else was doing these, you know, the little triangle for the eyes and the, you know, toothless grin and all of that, I peeled the pumpkin, the skin off the pumpkin, and I actually made it so the nose stuck out and the ears stuck out and the lips stuck out, and I still had the little eyes that were cut out so you could have the candle inside and the mouth that was cut out. But everything was more realistic and three-dimensional. And you know, my friends are like, Mary, why don't you just carve a normal pumpkin like everybody else? And I thought, I don't know, it just came. And that was when I was about 11 or 12 years old. So there was obviously something there that was a little bit stranger than the other kids in the neighborhood.
In her early 20s, Mary traveled to Europe and had a new awakening.
I was going through the cathedrals and the castles and all the wonderful buildings that had the, you know, both architectural, the stonework on the outside, and then you go in the inside and you see all this detail. It was absolutely beautiful, and I just remember just walking around just looking at this going, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to do this?
That desire turned into a reality after finding a master right down the road.
Ended up just going into the phone book and looking under wood carving. This was up in Minneapolis. And I found a teacher up there. His name is Konstantinos Papadakis. He studied back in Greece in the old apprentice way where they, you know, study for 7 years and, you know, quit school when you're, you know, 10 or 11 years old, and that was pretty much what you were doing from that point on. So he really learned the classical ways back in the 40s. And so he taught me, I think I studied with him for about 3 years, and I knew within a month of just having the tools in my hands, I thought, oh, if I can do this for a living, I would do anything. Just really learned the real precise classical techniques. If you've been inside a Greek Orthodox church, that's what the style is that he taught me. With the very sort of intricate lace work. It's very ornate and a lot of pierced carvings, and so I learned that technique, and it was quite an experience, and I just I'm very, very grateful for just being able to find a European master to learn from.
Burnt out by her day job as a graphic designer, another big opportunity was right around the corner.
The more I was doing my day job, working as a desktop publisher, the more I was dreaming about carving when I got home in the afternoon. So my mind was more on what I was going to do at home. So I was fortunate enough to get laid off. It doesn't happen very often. Where you actually, you know, I ended up getting a severance pay from being laid off and ended up going to England to study some more carving. So I thought, yay, I can actually do what I really wanted to do. So while I was there, I was working at a picture frame carving shop. So that was actually a very good experience because I learned the technique of real fast production carving, where you had to do, you know, 5 feet of egg and dart molding in 5 minutes, where you get this sort of production and efficient cuts. So that was very good. That helped me along the way from the professional part of my career of actually finishing the work that needs to be done. Well, then I ended up having an opportunity to go to Malaysia and work as a wood and stone carver in Malaysia, and just helping to decorate this big mansion in Kuala Lumpur. And I was there for 6 months, and at that point, if I can remember order of this. I think at that point I tried to start a business of wood carving in central Missouri, and there really wasn't a lot of requests for wood carving in central Missouri. And I hadn't really established myself as necessarily a furniture carver. It was more sort of architectural, and there wasn't a lot of that. I hadn't really gotten into the period of furniture or anything at that point. And then had an opportunity to come down to Charleston, and I'm thinking, well, you know, this is a good opportunity. The history down here and all the, you know, maybe historical restoration that's going on downtown. So I came down here and discovered very quickly that most of the restoration work downtown was plaster. It didn't have anything to do with wood. So I have not had a lot of that, that type of work, but just more opened up doors. You know, there's some larger homes along the water, along the beach, and so it ended up really me doing more like fireplace mantles for new homes, and a lot of newel posts, and you know, things that people like the low country theme, like the egrets and the live oak trees and that style. So yeah, that's pretty much what got me here.
Well, Mary, I just love this cross and the way it's kind of popping out of the board with, what kind of knots are those?
These are Celtic knots. You see how sort of overlapping? This looks like it's going underneath that one. And come back like that, and it looks like, so we've got this almost like a pretzel shape coming down there, but it's, the Celtic knot has sort of become a very very famous or popular thing where in jewelry or anything like that, where you've got this just a beautiful design overlapping, and
well, that is gorgeous. And your work is to find relief.
Yes, yeah, and try to find dimension. This is very shallow relief, and try to find as much dimension or three-dimensional appearance in a very, very shallow shallow amount of wood.
It's kind of a mystery almost. You look at it and it almost looks like it's applied because it's kind of jumping out of the board.
Yeah, well, what I did before was actually take and lower down this area so that you see this is the edge and it's angled down, and what happens then, this ends up looking like it's actually raised off the background just by simply lowering down this section. And then you can come over here and sort of clean up all the edges.
Now the grain is something that you have had to study and study and study.
Oh, definitely. There are some, especially the harder woods. This is basswood, and this is a little bit more forgiving. But when you're dealing with things like walnut or mahogany, something like that, you really have to be conscious of the direction that you can and cannot cut with the grain, because you can break off a lot of pieces, and there's only so many things you can actually glue back on.
Now you keep changing hands.
Yes, and that's definitely something that I really stress for beginner students, is to get into that position where you or get comfortable about moving right and left hand, because as you can see, right and left, I would have to turn this completely around if I needed to go in a certain direction when I'm just have to switch because of the grain. But just in this one little area, I've probably gone back and forth 5 or 6 times just to make sure that these cuts are going with the grain.
Now you don't use a stool.
No, I mean, if you can, I do a lot of moving when I'm actually carving, and a lot of sort of re-angling and twisting. I find that if I do try to sit down, within about 30 seconds I'm having to get up and reshift or move around in some other direction. So the only time I actually sit is if I'm doing something really, really tiny and I can just sort of focus on in that direction. But usually with something larger like this, I have to get up and shift, and if you also look, I'm leaning over the bench quite a lot, and I do a lot of sort of leaning onto the tool and pressing down. You can't really do that if you're sitting down.
Yeah. Letting your upper body just kind of make the cut in, I guess, instead of having to force the tool with your hands.
Right. I'm just using more my weight than actually muscles as I'm doing that.
Mary has found a lot of satisfaction, not only in her craft, but teaching it as well. Whether it's by visiting other cities to instruct eager students or by having students virtually visit her, this master has carved out her own special learning place on the web.
With the internet age, the whole world of education and woodworking has changed. There's so much out there now, online schools, videos. 2 years ago, I started an online school that is all videos, and it's, I think right now, off my head, I think I've got about 65 separate lessons, totaling really about 115 different separate videos. The wood carving craft really is kind of a dying out art, whereas the masters, there's not very many of the sort of traditional European masters left to teach. And so this is just, it's sort of my input into keeping this art as alive as possible for as long as possible.
A style of art Mary has devoted her life to.
My parents probably instilled this in us from a very young age, is that if you have a dream, if you have a passion, if you have something that you just love to do, don't let anything stop you from doing that. When I was growing up, my dad had this dream of living on a boat, and so twice, once when I was about 4 years old and once when I was about 11, he built a boat and took 5 of us kids and my mom on this trip down. One time it was down the Mississippi into the Bahamas, and then another time it was up the Intercoastal Waterway. And so we just had this adventure, and it's interesting because we didn't have a lot of money, so it wasn't this thing of, you know, this grand expensive adventure. It was actually, we were on a really tight budget, but because it was a dream of my dad's, we did it no matter what. You know, he had this passion, this dream of doing this and this adventure, and he wasn't gonna let a big family that he had to drag along stop him, or the fact that he didn't have a lot of money to do it. So, you know, seeing that no matter, you don't let things stop you. If you've got a dream, if you've got that passion, don't let all the little things like money and all the things that you think will normally stop you from doing things. Just don't let that happen. You look through and you look at the path that you go down, the path, and yeah, you can see the Lord's hand in all the directions and steering, and it's an incredible journey.
Earlier in the show, we learned about the Kreg Jig K5. Well, we've got it back here in the shop, and I'm just delighted to use it to make a jig, a table saw accessory for my shop here. So I've got all the pieces out and kind of put together, and this is the jig itself. It's got instruction booklets, and you've got some online help that this tells you about, so you can watch some videos to see how it works. There's a dust collection chute. There's a nifty little attachment that helps you get the collar on the bit in the right place. I think Kreg has thought of everything with this model. Well, let's see how it works. I'm using some 3/4 inch plywood, and so I've got the block here set to 3/4 inch. Very easy to do. This just slides up and down, and there it is at 3/4 inch. Now, the next thing is I've got to set the depth of cut, and they've got a nice little fixture here. It's a little block that you can drop it in for a 3/4 inch stock, and it sits right here. And then you've got a stop collar that goes on, and all you have to do is tighten it up. And every time I drill in 3/4 inch stock for a 1 1/4 inch screw, I'm going to get the right depth. Let me show you what to do next. Well, the Kreg jig is great for joining material, especially at 90-degree angles. So you drill a hole for a pocket screw, and you can see the drill bit coming out right down here. And it leaves it just shy of coming out the other side of the piece, but it makes a hole so that you can pull the other piece up at a 90-degree angle. And that's basically how it works. This jig just makes it easier to do it. All right, I finished laying out some locations for my pocket screws, and we're going to go back to the jig and line it up and drill some perfect holes. All right, so now I'm ready to clamp it, and that's what it does so well. Listen for 2 to 3 clicks, pull it down, and it holds it very firm. Then pick up your drill. It's got a drill stop on it that we installed, and you'll want to run it at full speed before you start plunging in for the cut. And then make all your holes. Then you'll be ready to put it together. Well, this table saw accessory is going to move back and forth on my table saw fence. So I've got it clamped around it, and all I got to do is just drive some screws in. That's just wonderful. Pulls it up tight. All right, let's attach the other side with some screws. And then we'll put a ledger board on. I'll be ready to use it. Well, I added a ledger board and clamped up some stock. Let's take a test cut and see how it works. Well, that was easy. It was Craig easy. Improve your woodworking experience. Sign up for Wood News Online, a monthly newsletter showcasing the latest news, tips, and classes Highland Woodworking has to offer. By signing up, you'll receive the latest episode of the Highland Woodworker, special store promotions, and Wood News Online delivered straight to your inbox. Sign up today. Thank you so much for watching this show. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And until next time, I'm Charles Brock, and I'm a Highland Woodworker.